Hey everybody, this is Tim Hart, VanDyk Mortgage. We have with us today Wyatt Daltry from City Cape Coral. He is the planning coordinator. Cool name. So he's with us today. Wyatt, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Tim. I'm glad to be here. Just going to be speaking today about mainly about the 50% FEMA rule impacts from Hurricane Ian. Want me to take it away here, Tim?
Yeah, well, real quick, just so everyone is aware, what we're in Southwest Florida here, and Wyatt, running the show that is City Cape Coral, same thing, and we got devastated by Hurricane Ian. So I believe this will be this rule is really kind of coming as a shock to some people. They didn't know about any of this, or most people didn't, and so I've been getting a lot of questions out there. I've been seeing them. I've been hearing about them. I know when we started talking about maybe doing this video, I had other questions and concerns showing up. So I appreciate you being with us today, man, and doing this. We met a Remax event where you did the same thing. So I am going to hand it over to you. You got your PowerPoint up, which is looking really sharp, man. You did a good job with this. So let's hand it over to you, man. And I'll be over here in case. Oh, by the way, if you're watching this live, if you got questions or anything, just drop them in the chat. I'm staring at it right over here on this screen, so I'll be able to see it. If you do have questions, and I'll just jump in and ask Wyatt when he takes a break on something. All right. So Wyatt, all yours, buddy.
All right, appreciate it, Tim. Thanks again.
Yeah, man.
All right, folks. Again, Wyatt Daltry with Cape Coral. Been here for about 20 years with the city of Cape Coral. So if you watch council meetings regularly, there's a very good chance you've seen me present cases before council. But let's talk about the 50% FEMA rule here, since that's one of the hats I wear, is that of a certified floodplain manager. FEMA rule applies to the special flood hazard area. If you've ever heard of an A zone or a V zone, that's a special flood hazard area. This map shows in blue the areas that are in the special flood hazard area. Areas in green were recently removed from the A zone and the V zone back in November, and the areas in brown were added. So right now, about half of the developable part of Cape Coral is in the special flood hazard area. So, you're in Florida. Cape Coral's bordered on 3 sides by water. We have 400 miles of canals, and the most unfortunate recent hurricane that we had is kind of just hit that point home, that floods and hazards that caused by floods are something that Cape Coral has to deal with.
And Wyatt, on that map though, just so everyone's aware, the new one came out, but that's been in the works for how long now?
Oh gosh, I've been working as a floodplain manager for about 7 years now, and when I started, they were working on the maps for this. So it's a very lengthy process whenever FEMA updates these. One of the key things behind the new map that kind of led to this update was they were using it's a system called Risk Map. Basically, it's a lot of bathymetric surveys, LiDAR. They brought out all the best and newest science out there to basically create the updated flood map. And so yeah, these things don't happen. This did not occur as a result of Hurricane Ian. It was in the process for quite some time before Hurricane Ian developed. So anyhow, regarding Hurricane Ian and what happened to us, as we know, and I'll just go through this part real fast. We were impacted by storm surge. Usually, for Floridian communities, generally speaking, that is your main flood hazard. Florida does fairly well with draining water, and we don't have much in the way of elevation. So things like water pooling at the bottom of the mountain, that doesn't affect us. Snow melt obviously doesn't affect us. But storm surge caused by landfalling hurricanes, that's what affects us. And unfortunately, that's what affected Cape Coral. High water marks, or I think they're completing the collection of them, but evidence suggests the surge is between 7 and 8 feet. Now, most of the homes that were affected by storm surge, we're talking areas near the yacht club, some areas of Southwest Cape Coral. These were houses that were built prior to 1981. Prior to 1981, we didn't have flood maps. The city was not a participating community in the National Flood Insurance Program. So what happened was you had houses that were built basically slab on grade. No fill was placed to lift the structure up. and very few in the way of even things like septic tanks, which, you know, as you know, you have to put those provide some elevation as well. So that's the reason why a lot of those houses in the yacht club area had 2 to 3 feet of water in their houses, because they are 2 to 3 feet below what is called the base flood elevation. Basically, it's the 1% annual flood chance. So that's general. There's some houses built after 81 that were affected, that were flooded also, but it was particularly an acute issue that hits those houses built in 1981. And this map shows houses, structures built prior to 1981. The green dots are residential, and you can kind of see where they're clustered. Southeastern Cape Coral again, near the yacht club area, near the old golf course, and you know, east of Del Prado. And these are the areas that were greatly hit by the storm surge.
Wait, so on this map, I'm sorry, the green areas are the ones that.
Yep, the green dots. Yeah, basically what we did was every structure we put a dot. So the red represents commercial buildings, the green residential, the purple industrial. So, you know, back in 1981, you know, that was where the city started growing first, was in the southeast by the yacht club and by the golf course, and then
Yeah, and then all the way up down the river, huh?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
gotcha.
All right.
And
So,
again, just so you guys are aware, this is just for Cape Coral. Like, you didn't do the dots and stuff for Fort Myers, right?
no, this is just a Cape Coral centric presentation.
Yeah, I gotcha.
All right. So now, how does the 50% rule fall into this? So, if a structure receives 50% or greater damage by market value and is not consistent with current required flood standards, it can only be rebuilt to the required flood standards, in which case we're really talking about the elevation. So remember when I mentioned about those houses in the yacht club area being 2 to 3 feet below base flood elevation, which is why they had that flood water in their house? Well, FEMA requires that communities that are part of the NFIP, like Cape Coral, to permit these structures to rebuild, they need to be brought up to that elevation. Basically, what you don't want is repeated, consistent flooding of structures. As you can imagine, that impacts insurance rates, as they're continuously paying out insurance rates for repetitive loss structures. So that's a big deal for us, because we had a lot of houses that were older and that were flooded. And but just to be completely as clear as possible here, this is a federal requirement as a member of the NFIP. And I'll get, and pretty much my last slide will say why we do this, why the 50% rule is important, why we're following up on this.
Wyatt, real quick, we do have a question. Shout out to Patrick Reed from Remax.
Okay.
He asked, can we get the link to those maps?
We have, I can provide them. I can provide them online. Tell you what I'll do, Tim. I'll get that online. I'll send you the links. And is that something to send out to the?
Yeah. We'll send it out when we send the video out. Patrick, we'll get it out to you, buddy.
Sounds good. All right, now about the 50% rule, you have it. There's really 3 things that need to be met. It's structures that are in the special flood hazard area. It's structures that are not consistent with floodplain requirements, which in most cases is they're below the base flood elevation. And the structures have to take that 50% damage. You can have a structure that took 50% of damage, but isn't in the special flood hazard area. In that case, 50% rule doesn't apply to you. There's not a floodplain that your property is located in, that your structure is located in. You can pull permits immediately, no problem. But you have to meet all 3 of these to be part of for the 50% rule to apply. For a lot of older structures, those structures built in the 60s and the 70s, you probably don't have an elevation certificate unless there was a recent purchase and that was something the lender required. If you are uncertain of your elevation, a surveyor can help determine that elevation of the structure. We have several local surveyors within the area. They're undoubtedly getting a lot of business because, again, with the new maps, we have some people who are brought into the flood zones, and now they're getting elevation certificates developed. Commercial structures. Now, most of this is geared towards residences, but commercial structures, when they are affected by the 50% rule, they can do something called dry flood proofing at the existing grade. They don't necessarily need to be built up, but that's not an option for residential. So So that may occur for some areas, say in the CRA or along Del Prado, where they had some flood damage. But also, generally speaking, the value of those commercial structures, it's often harder to hit that 50% number. Now, just to further clarify this point,
Are you also somewhere in here? Do you break down like this 50%? Like, where can you like go a little bit into the value? Like, if my house is assessed, it got flooded. It's in the yacht club there, and it's assessed at 400 grand.
Mhm.
Are you gonna go into that like kind of?
I'll be getting into that, particularly with a look at what Lee County provides us for that data. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Calculation.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Oh, definitely. Now, regarding the damage, it's damage to the structure only. So things like your contents and your landscaping, the pool cage, plug-in appliances, they don't count. So FEMA is only concerned about your structure when it comes to that 50% determination. They have a lengthy list of housing elements that we are supposed to review in making that 50% determination. And the way we determine it is it's from the flooding event or the damaging event. So what I tell people is, be upfront for the 50% determination. It's not permit by permit. So if you come to us, today with a roof permit because you had damages from Hurricane Ian, and then 2 months later come with damages, for a kitchen remodel because you had 3 feet of water in your house, we're going to count those, the value of those repairs together. So don't try and daisy chain is really the point I'm trying to make here. One update, and this was something that was not true back when Tim and I were discussing this a month ago in front of some realtors over at RE/MAX. We had what was called a 5-year cumulative impact assessment. So what had happened up until November 30th was we would add the damage from Ian and any repairs or alterations to structure from the past 5 years to make that 50% determination. Well, the city removed that. That was a city regulation. We realized that this was going to be hurting a lot of people who were marginal. They were close to that 50% or slightly above that 50% because their insurance agency told them they needed a new roof 2 years ago. So we got rid of the 5-year impact. So what we're looking at now for purposes of the 50% is damages divided by the market value of your structure. And if that's 50% or higher, you'll have to build up. If it's below 50%, you can pull permits and keep your structure at its current grade. So that was an update that I wanted to add as part of this presentation. Okay, so 50% rule. How do we determine your building's market value? So there's actual cost value, which is the cost of in-kind repairs for your structure. I probably should have switched these two, but there's a recent private appraisal from a licensed appraiser is a way that we are accepting building market value. And the one that we use mostly, because it's kind of like your default number, is it's the assessed tax value from the Lee County property appraiser. Excuse me, it's actually your market value from the Lee County property appraiser. Property appraiser is now providing market value.
Yeah, right.
There's a small adjustment to that we add as a factor to that number. And I think my next few slides kind of show us where we find that information. Okay, here we go.
And just if I can pause real quick there. So there's 3 options. Those 3 options are to establish value, correct?
That's correct.
So who chooses, like, if you're the borrower, you obviously want probably the highest valued one, correct?
Correct. And
to avoid the 50% rule. So how do you pick which of the 3 you use?
Well, by default, we'll use the county number, but when someone is providing us with their cost repairs through their permits, we give them the option to provide us with that county, with private appraiser data.
Oh, okay.
We do accept that. That's in our ordinance. So those are legitimate options that we can use in lieu of the county data.
Okay. So you start with the county, and then if maybe they don't like the number, they can get a private appraiser. You allow that?
That is correct. And
Right.
the reason for that is simple. The county data is invariably lower. It is always lower. I get to see a private appraisal that was lower than the county's data, and the county recognizes this. So that's, it's nothing against the county. It's just, they do these appraisals once a year, right around January 1st. We're in December. So, and, as we know, prior to the hurricane, housing market, well, particularly up until the point when they started raising interest rates, our housing market was on fire. So,
Yeah.
The numbers really don't relate to each other, particularly this late in the year. So,
Right. And let's also all be honest. We want the county to value our properties lower, so
Correct.
your taxes are lower.
Absolutely.
But it's cool you get an option to get an appraiser, because you are right, they're always lower. Like the opposite of Zillow.
Yeah. So if you want to know, okay, well, how do I get the value of my home from the county property appraiser? There's really 4 steps. One is to go to Lee County Property's website. That's www.lipa.org. On their first page, I have a red circle. Just type in your site address. It's going to open up basically a database search. I was using someone else's property as an example, so apologies for blanking out everything.
No, I get it.
There'll be an address and an owner ID, and where I have that circle has parcel data. So you want to select that link for your property. And then you'll get, your property data. So there'll be an aerial of your property, below that an image of the structure from the street. This is actually a pretty good site as far as your site data. If you're looking for things like previous, purchases and sales of the property. Here it says tax roll value letter circled in red. You want to click on that link. There's going to be a little box that says you want future updates. I usually just hit continue. I don't need updates for my property, much less anyone else's. And it's going to open up basically a pre-generated letter from the property appraiser. And it's going to say your 2022 tax roll value. And it's going to break down the just value of your property. So you have your total value on top, your land value, your land extra features value, your building value, and your building extra features value. And it's that building value that's important, the one that I have circled here. So using this example, the building value is $132,430. So that we will use an adjustment factor provided by the property appraiser. It's 1.07. So roughly the math for that comes out to about 140,000. Half of that is like your magic number, because that's your 50%. That's the amount that your cost to repair needs to be below in order for your structure to not be required to be brought up to new elevation. So that's where the math comes in. So we take the building value. Now I've had questions, why not building extra features value? Well, that's things like fences or docks. So that's not part of the primary structure, which is what FEMA cares about. So it's building value on this. I remember I mentioned that landscaping didn't matter. Yeah, that's right. That's your land value. That's your land extra features value. So again, building value is the central thing that we look at. And it's half of that number is that magic number as far as determining 50% rule. So that's how the math is done here. We have folks here in Cape Coral in the building department that do that analysis with the information that's provided to us. And what will happen upon our determination, if it's over 50%, you'll receive a letter from us. And that's a letter you get to receive the ICC credit, the increased cost of compliance credit. Should be up to $30,000, which I think is too low, but there's been a lot of discussion about bringing that number up. So,
well, a couple of things real quick right there. One, by the way, if you're watching right now and you do have questions, we are live on Facebook. Just pop them in the chat. We're happy to answer those. Alicia, I see you have one. And I want to get that in a second. But so, I mean, that example you just showed, right? So like, I mean, let's just say it's $70,000, just under that, in repairs, the 50% rule. And with like, just say it's whatever, 60 or 70 grand, just say 70. Like that includes and it had major roof damage, right? So it needs a new roof. So like the roof right away is going to eat up a lot of that money, right? So I mean, roofs are included in all of this, correct?
That's right. Roofs, walls, doors, windows, built-in appliances, flooring, drywall,
Anything to the structure.
and yeah, HVAC, electrical, mechanical, plumbing. Yeah, it's very exhaustive list.
Get eaten up quick right now.
You're supposed to include market value of materials. So if your brother-in-law is a contractor and is throwing you some materials on the cheap, we're required to use market value for that. Overhead and profit from a contractor is included in that. It's not the cost of repairs, it's the cost to repair is what FEMA is focusing on. And while that sounds like it's a semantic difference, that's the difference is, if you have an owner builder who does this, who flips houses and does these repairs and they could do it on the cheap, FEMA doesn't care. They're concerned about the cost to repair.
Right. It includes the profit, huh? So that's okay. Gotcha. And then just a reminder for everybody, this is not just a Lee County Cape Coral thing. It's anyone participating in this program. I do have a couple questions. Can we stop real quick?
Absolutely.
I got Frank Glab's on here too. All right. See, Alicia asked, let's see, this may be more of I'll ask, she said, does a claim stay with the property? And if the insured folks don't bring it to FEMA code, they take the settlement and sell it truly as is, or they do minimal improvement? Will that affect a buyer obtaining flood insurance? That may not be your area.
That may not be my area, but I am hearing a lot about people who are just walking away.
Yeah, I think I know the answer to that one. I think the people are just walking away with the insurance money, and the new buyer they go in knowing they got to repair it. That's the way I understood that. Alicia, we can talk another time on that one. I can try to answer that better. And then Frank said, wow, roofs shouldn't be included. I agree. And then said that's not a flooding issue, that's a wind issue. How do you answer that? Since that's a unique unique point. The roof damage wasn't caused by flooding.
Yeah. The reason, as I understand it from FEMA's perspective, is this: you have a structure that is not compliant with your floodplain. And so it's going to continue to be vulnerable until it is brought up to floodplain standards. So as a result, it doesn't matter where the source of damage comes from. The house could burn down. You'd have to rebuild it at the required elevation. That's how the substantial damage rule occur. That's how the substantial damage rule is written. So you could have a mixture of wind and flood damage, which is actually very common after what happened with Hurricane Ian. They're not going to say, oh, well, this happened from the wind, so we don't count that. It's all sources of damage.
Yeah.
You could have had a house that had no damage, but the generator set the house on fire. And that would be, if you're in the flood zone, if you're in a special flood hazard area and your structure is below that base flood, the required elevation, you have to build up to the new elevation. That is FEMA's remit, is to try and make as many of these structures less vulnerable as possible. Yeah,
geez. Oh, good answer, man. The kind of what a bummer. Though, for people. And Frank and Alicia and Frank, thanks for the questions. And again, if you guys have more questions, drop them in the comments. But Frank did say cost roof shouldn't be included, but not the city's fault. Is more of a federal government thing. So everyone, if you're watching this, keep that in mind. This is not Wyatt waving his wand saying, hey, you gotta don't beat the guy up over this stuff.
I do not want to be that person.
You're just bringing the knowledge, man. So that was good information. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. And so the question we get is, okay, well, 50% rule, it's a bummer. So why are we doing this? And the reason for this is we're a participant in the National Flood Insurance Program. And as part of that participation, kind of like joining any club, you have to follow the rules. And these rules are set by FEMA. Now, the National Flood Insurance Program allows the city to obtain FEMA flood insurance and federal assistance. So it's really the only game in town to get flood insurance and to get federal assistance. As you well know, mortgage-backed, federally backed mortgages require flood insurance. So that's why we have to represent FEMA in this regard as it pertains to 50% rule. Because if we are found not to be compliant, they kick us out of the NFIP. You don't get flood insurance. You don't get federal assistance. It becomes a really bad day. So our real estate industry takes a big hit because, again, federally backed mortgages require flood insurance. So that's why we're doing this. That's why our hands are often tied as it comes to federal requirements. Where we do have city requirements, remember the 5-year community impact I mentioned before, we can change those, and we did in this case with the 5-year. But the federal requirements they're set in stone. So unfortunately, we end up being the
Now, to be clear, all of Lee County's under this, right? Not just Cape Coral.
I mean, you tens of thousands of communities throughout the nation are members of the NFIP, and so Lee County, Fort Myers, I would say pretty much every community in Florida is a member of the National Flood Insurance Program. There's things we try to do to mitigate just the impacts of flood. I did mention the CRS program, but we are a member of the community rating system. We're a classified community, so as a result, people get 25% discounts on their flood insurance premiums. And that's actually true for Lee County. I want to say Fort Myers is a 6, so we get a 20% discount. Anyway, a lot of communities in Florida, we recognize that there are some severe constraints that we have because we're members of the NFIP, but we do what we can to try and reduce the impact on our residents. So, so anyway, that's the 50% rule. Why we do this. I'll be concluding here. Here's my contact information. My phone number might.
Look at you, man! You putting your phone number out there. This guy, what a man of the people you are, Wyatt.
Well, I will be the first to tell you I have a lot of phone calls to return. So if you wish to contact me and get a quick response or quicker response, please use my email address.
Right.
Particularly if I'm going to be sending you links and sending you some paperwork, that's really the best way to get a hold of me, the best way to have that communication. But if need be, you want to give me a phone call, and there's a chance I may be able to be at my office and pick up. So,
well, hey, we got a couple more questions here coming in. And by the way, we're going to be wrapping this up probably soon. I'm assuming that the Wyatt's contact info is the signal that he's tapping out on the presentation. So if you do have questions, make sure. Oh, there it is. All right, I knew it. Get these questions in here, but we've got two. Alicia, I know she asked about the Cape Coral 5-year look back. He talked about that earlier on. City of Cape Coral has waived that. Right, Wyatt?
That is correct. It is gone. We removed it from our ordinance. I will tell you, council has, when they removed it, it's going to be temporary. It was the feeling I got from our council, but it's going to probably be a couple of years before we revisit it. So for now, and at least the foreseeable short-term future, we're not looking back 5 years.
Okay. The next one's a doozy. This is from a girl, Lindsay Honeycutt, who, by the way, Lindsay, you said you're watching with your whole office. Don't forget that selfie with everybody. We want to see it. But Lindsay asked, this is a good question. How are residential condos affected by the 50% rule?
They are, okay, so like any other structure in the special flood hazard area, they are subject to the 50% rule. Now, fortunately, particularly your multi-story condos, they're not tripping that number. As you can imagine, just the valuation of the building is such that even if you're flooding out the first level units, well, the values of these third and fourth and fifth floors are such that the damages don't reach that 50%. However, if we were in such a situation where, say, it's maybe a 2-story condo and the damages are over 50%, like any other residential, it'll need to be brought into compliance with the floodplain standards.
Oof. So, like in these cases for condos, you're using the total value of the complex. It's like the whole building, like if there's 8 units or 12 or whoever, like, High Point, not High Point, but like an 8 unit development, a building, and the bottom floor, there's 4 of them, gets damaged. you're going to use the total value of all 8 of those units.
All 8 of those units and any additional, like just regular, larger structural valuation. Correct. That's how we would do it. And then we would add all the damages to all those first 4 units, add that together, and then divide that by exactly the sum of all the entire complex.
Okay, gotcha.
Entire building, excuse me, entire building, but yes.
Yeah, entire building. I gotcha. But not like that. Like if there's like, hey, we've got 10 buildings here with 8 units apiece, and half of them got flooded. It's going to be per building, right?
That is correct. It is a per building analysis. Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. All right. I don't see any other questions on here. So if you guys do, Wyatt gave his info. Make sure you shoot him an email. I would go email first. I appreciate him giving his time. I got to imagine you've been taking some arrows, the last, since the hurricane hit. So do we appreciate you doing this? If you have questions, email Wyatt on it. If we can ever help with anything mortgage related here in Southwest Florida or anywhere in Florida and a lot of other states are licensed in, give us a call anytime, 239-437-4278. Always here to help and serve. Wyatt, appreciate you, man. Did we miss anything? You good?
I'm good. And I appreciate, again, Tim, I appreciate the opportunity to provide this information. Thank you.
Man. Hey, if you ever need to get pre-approved to buy a home or refinance, make sure you holler at me, okay?
Thank you.
All right. See you, buddy.